Perfect. If you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, we can go ahead and get started.
Sure, I'll start. I'm Christina Dula, and I'm with Pack 1 in Quincy at Blessed Sacrament.
I'm Kristen Martin, and I'm with Pack 54 out of Lutz in Iowa.
And I'm Keely Kangas. I'm the Shaka Khan Senior District Executive, and I'll be the moderator for today. And then I'll also touch base on some safety-related things from National.
Alrighty, so when this all happened, when COVID happened in March, everything just came to a halt, and a lot of people weren't able to have their blue and golds and things like that. And so it was really kind of hard figuring out how we were going to go forward. One of the things that we Pack 1 did as it kind of progressed was that the committee kind of kept their meetings going and stayed in contact with each other. So we had our regular committee meetings to kind of figure out how we were going to go. And in those committee meetings, what we did was we were able to kind of assess the unit and see when we were finally allowed to meet in person, just to kind of feel out our parents and feel out the kids. We did a survey to see who felt safe to meet in person once we were allowed to, what type of safety measures they wanted to see put in place for us to safely meet in person. And we just kind of reached out to all the parents to see how they would feel about their scouts participating in a larger group. Pack 1 is a little bit larger of a unit. We have about 30 kids. Not all of them attend the meetings at the time, but at the same time, but my den has 7 kids. So trying to figure out how to safely get 7, they're 6 years old, together. So we just wanted to assess the unit. And then once we got all that information back, we kind of were able to figure out how everybody was feeling. And then we were able to figure out how we were going to proceed. And then Keely, did you want to go to the next one? Yes. And then what we did is we came up with some top priorities for our unit. It kind of looks like a lot, but we have a full committee, so we were able to kind of take on some things. So the things that were important to us were advancement, and how do we, when we don't know what's going on in kind of with our communities and stuff, like where we're going, how do we keep the scouts from falling behind? I know at the end of the school year, we're trying to figure out how are we going to get them their advancements, because we're not allowed to meet. We weren't able to meet in person until I think in August. The other thing was, how do we keep the unit going forward? We wanted to make sure we retained our scouts. We wanted to make sure they were thinking about us. So we were thinking about them. We wanted to figure out how to resume our in-person meetings, and then when we could do that. And then how to grow the pack, which was part of our recruitment. And then we wanted to think, how do we encourage the scouts to participate in the fundraiser during a pandemic, knowing that we had popcorn and we were allowed to sell door to door in storefront. But how do we do that safely? So our committee met, we kind of came up with all of the ideas for that. And I know Kristen is going to speak a little bit more after this one right here. Okay. Or Keely's going to speak, sorry.
Thank you, Christina. So National, the Boy Scouts of America program group, they came up with the Restart Scouting checklist, and with the acronym SAFE. I want to kind of do a caveat to everybody that SAFE does not mean risk-free. So our safety of our scouts, our volunteers, employees, communities, that's our top priority, but we also want to make sure that our kids are having fun and still having a program. So the first part of the SAFE acronym is S for supervision, which is understanding your local and state guidance on preventing COVID-19 exposures. So for example, in Illinois, there's a face mask order that is in effect if you are inside, and then if you are outdoors and unable to maintain 6 feet distance, you need to be wearing a face mask. Engage your chartered organization and local council on necessary adjustments. So if you have a participant who maybe is at more risk, you're going to need to be looking at what type of preventatives you can do as a unit. In Iowa, there is not currently a restriction nor a face mask mandate. As a council, you are highly encouraged to follow the Illinois guidelines. However, you are to overall follow the CDC and the government body that your chartering organization is a part of. And then there are the conduct the before you gather protocols. So right on this part of the PowerPoint, you can see there's the before you gather protocols, which include talking to your local council, communicating to your constituents, educating and train people on what it means to socially distance, how to clean and disinfect, hand sanitizing, hand washing practices. These are all great things for you to do as a den meeting or even as a virtual meeting, just so that way people get used to what they need to do. To be honest, at this point, most people, this is going to be a review. And then before attending, you should screen for any of these symptoms. So if you see a scout who's there and they're coughing and they're sniffling a lot, it's your job as a unit leader to tell that parent that, we've got options for you to participate online or at the next meeting, and it's not going to be the end of the world for them to miss this one. And then as appropriate, there should be face coverings when they're gathering, especially when you're in person in an enclosed space. And then you should be communicating to all of those who take part in person that they should avoid contact with high-risk individuals for at least 2 weeks after the event. So that is part of the CDC recommendations. Then we talked a little bit about assessment. So A stands for assessments, and that is part of identifying those who are at a higher risk, and then verifying that all of your activities are going to be following state orders. So in the state of Illinois, gatherings are limited to 50 people. So if you have a large unit, you're going to have to do some accommodating to make sure that you're following all of those state guidelines. F is fitness and skill, which we have the annual health and medical records, and we recommend that you make sure that you're filling that out annually. That's why it exists. That's why it was came up with, and it's for not just your summer camp, it's for all of the programs that you hold. So that way you have that on file, you know who has asthma, who has allergies, and you're able to reference that when you need to. The other part is E for equipment and environment. So that is verifying that you've got the appropriate cleaning supplies when you're at your meetings, making sure that you're following social distancing and interactions, especially when food's involved, and then monitoring participants for changing health conditions. And then that's the as you gather protocols. Goes through, minimizing your group sizes, staying local to your geographic area, minimize mixing, and, some of the different things that you see across most of our businesses in our service area. So some big stuff are that, especially for our Iowa units who are tenting, making sure that you're following the rules that are enforced or at least put out by the national organization. And then also some of the ones that you may not think of is that, you should look at doing individual tents. Scouts could sleep head to toe, so that way they aren't sleeping face to face with each other, because you can't control, you're not gonna wear a face mask when you're sleeping, but if you've got scouts tenting together, they can sleep head to toe to help eliminate, coughing at each other or sneezing and some of the nasty gooey stuff that happens while they're camping. Of course, the big thing is that if you have any situation, please come to our council. We can give you guidance on what to do if there's a situation that occurs. We have a risk management team that's always there to help troubleshoot. But this is a great starting point when it comes to the safety side of how to have good meetings.
This is something that we do at all of our PAC meetings. I just kind of keep all this stuff in its own little bag, but We also have group chats that we do with every level. So Lion has their own group chat, and Tiger and so on. And so before every meeting, we send out the screening checklists just as a reminder. Usually our meetings are on Sundays, so we send it out on Saturday as a reminder to please check the screening checklist to make sure that you or your scout does not have these symptoms before you come. And then we have it out again right when they walk in the door to check in, as well as having people hand sanitize. We have face masks available for them if they don't have one. We try to do as much social distancing as possible because Iowa is not a state that mandates masks, so people are a little bit more relaxed here than Illinois. So while we encourage masks, if people aren't wearing them, we make sure to do activities where they can be spaced apart, which luckily, at least in our pack, we have the ability to distance. For same thing as tying it back into some of our scout laws, like a scout is clean. We make sure to wash our hands, well, always, not just during COVID season, before a snack and after snack, and, you know, being considerate and kind and everything. So we just have this out whenever anybody gets there. Next one, that's back to Christina.
So one of the things when you decide to gather as a group for an in-person meeting is to look at the spaces that are available to your unit. You can put a heavy emphasis on outdoor spaces. That's what we did when we started meeting in August. At the end of August, we had like a barbecue outside at one of the parks in Quincy. We were able to rent the shelter. We had events at Saukanack. So the council camps are open right now. It allows for social distancing. You can go fishing. You can do all sorts of things there. The chartered organization facility, we're able to have ours in the cafeteria. There were some restrictions for a really long time, and they just kind of released that. So, and then like I said, the parks, our council offices, in the Quincy service area has an outdoor space, and you can also use their meeting room if you have a smaller, I would say for a smaller unit for inside. And then the Burlington office also has a meeting space, right, Keely? Yes, they do. And then if there's any scout family that has a large space, some people may have a lot of land where you can bring your entire unit and just kind of spread out. For our popcorn kickoff, we did it in our driveway, and we have a pretty big lawn. So like I just set up some games, and not everybody was there at one time. We spaced the timing of it out. So we just had people come, and I was able to talk to each person while the kids were playing. I was able to talk to each parent. So just kind of, sometimes you may have to think outside of the box. It may not just be your normal meeting space, but just these are some of the things that are available to your unit.
This is something that we utilized in the spring, because we're back to face now, but in the spring when we were doing everything virtually, we came up with ways to be able to like start meetings or start different things. We actually use this during our virtual blue and gold, but can be used for every meeting to still have that sense of formality that we follow in Scouts and still include the youth. So you can pre-record or have parents record, which is what I did. Parents all record their kids and then send them back to me to compile them, to start off so that one scout hat starts the Pledge of Allegiance at one meeting, and then you can do a video of somebody else at the next. So it allows them to still have that active role and be part of it. So we're gonna watch this really adorable scout do their scout pledge. I'm not biased.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
So, you know, it makes them feel special when they're watching the video and they're active in a Zoom meeting or whatever, however it's being conducted, to see themselves in there. And then did the same thing with the Scout Oath.
Do my duty to God and my country. I the Scout law to help other people at all times. And morally straight.
Very soft-spoken little fellow there. But, you know, again, you can change up who does it each week. And then the next one is, and this was fun, we actually ended up having exactly 12 people at the end of last year. So each kid got their own Scout law. So compiling them together to be able to each be in charge of a law, which kind of inspired me to do that again this year when we're in person, but it worked well here.
Scout is brave. This is the trail Cub Scout yards.
So just fun and creative ways to, even when you're in Zoom or however you might be doing your meetings, to still include and make the Scouts active and part of it. And it also gets the parents involved into, you know, recording them and practicing those things at home.
This is Scout is
Another thing that we did in the spring, which just to continue to keep kiddos engaged and Scouts ready and learning, was to send out mail. And who doesn't love mail, especially kids? My kids are always excited for mail. So we made these, and our emails are at the end of this. So if anybody ever wants anything that they see, don't hesitate to reach out, because I am happy to share rather than recreating the wheel. But this is just a two-sided little bookmark that I made up and laminated that we have hanging on our fridge. And actually by the end of the summer, my lion, now tiger, had the Scout Oath down. So, you know, it encourages them to keep working on it at home, and it gets them excited even when they're not there. And any type of mail helps. You know, we continue to do weekly homework and work on different electives, as well as required adventure loops. And so as kids achieve those loops, we could send them to them in their mail and then present it to them in the next meeting when we met online, or at the end of the year, before we had our virtual blue and gold, I delivered packages to every Scout's front door and left them there so that they could have all their awards and certificates and loops and everything. So just being more creative on how to reach out. This is an example of our lesson plans, one of the lesson plans that we did. And it's kind of thinking outside the box, like some of our teachers have to right now, with having had the in-person lesson plan as well as a hybrid lesson plan for online learning. So that if, let's say, a youth is at home under quarantine, which I know I had one of my Scouts that got sent home from school today under quarantine because he was in the same class as somebody else. So he won't be at our next meeting. So at least there I have an idea that I need to prepare for him a at-home lesson, since he won't be able to be there. But it's just kind of tweaking the lessons. So this is one that the Ready, Set, Grow elective loop from the Lion done last year, and it tweaked it to be able to do it at home. So this one requires that they go to an actual farm, learn how to plant with a farmer and all these fun things. Well, we had to be a little adaptive. So I did some research and found some YouTube videos on how to do plants or how compost works, and they're fun and interactive. So put those in there to take place of going to an actual farm, and just different activities that they can do at home rather than in a den. And it was great. We'd use this one in the spring, and people on our group chats are sending pictures of these kids potting their little plants, and my son still has his outside. We had to replot it because it got too big. So, you know, it's a neat way for them to do that. Usually I would put some type of homework in there that they would complete to turn in, or ask for like a picture, something so that they can be engaged and show us as den leaders that they're completing these lessons. And again, there's no reason to recreate the wheel. So if you're ever like, ooh, I need an at-home Lion lesson, feel free to reach out. I've got them all.
So this is Pack 1 had a couple of events. The one on the left was our fishing derby, and we chose outside because it was still warm. We were trying to figure out what could we do. Like I said, we have a large pack, so if everybody brought a parent, we were going to end up with like 60 people. Fortunately, not everybody shows up. I mean, ideally, you want everybody to show up to your pack meetings, but in times of COVID, you're kind of, like, okay, we're going to push that limit if we do. But we chose some outdoor spaces that allows for fresh air. Some people don't feel comfortable inside, and it allowed for social distancing. So on the left, we have, so on the left is when we went to Saukanack for our fishing derby, and on the right, we have our first pack meeting of the year. Fortunately, the park we were at had a lot of benches. We served pizza before our pack meetings, and it allowed for people to kind of be spaced out. There was a play area so that siblings could go and play. So like one parent was with another child. So not everybody was packed into a space. Before our meetings, even the outdoor ones, I had wanted to add this when Kristen was talking about the little safety kind of bucket you have with the sanitizer. We actually do temperature checks before all of our meetings. So I just left our pack meeting and somebody was at the door doing the tip checks and writing it down. It was just one more precaution that we could take in case there was something that we had, and we would have it documented, just because we are a larger group and you just kind of never know what's going to happen. You can go to the next one. So this was our fishing derby. This picture on the left was probably the closest the Scouts got all day, and it's because the Webelow leader was showing them how to break down a fish. And it's like such a tiny fish, but it was the biggest fish somebody caught that day. So he was kind of showing them how you break that down, and everybody was so interested. But our Scouts did really well. On the right, you'll see we have at Saukanack, they have the little swim area and the dock, and then there's another dock. And so families just kind of spread out along the dock. So if they stayed in their area, they would pull their mask down. And the Scouts, it was really great weather. It was a lot of fun. It was actually my first time fishing. I was so excited. So it was a great place to kind of have that event. We actually had a really great turnout. We were able to do a couple of adventures while we were there. Like we went on a little hike. So we kind of planned ahead of all the things we could do while we were utilizing this space. So I know 2 dens earned belt loops that day. And we were just kind of able to have an outing, and the kids were able to be with their friends. And I will say that, and I'm sure it's because we are in Illinois, but like our Scouts do really, really well with their masks. You don't usually have to tell them, hey, I mean, sometimes it'll fall below their nose and you just tell them to pick it up, but for the most part, everyone is really good about it. So I'm sure that there's still some things we could do. I remember last year I went to the Polar Bear Day Camp for the Cub Scouts. So I'm sure they'll be doing something like that, but we could also see if your unit can do something at Saukanack or Eastman, even though it's cold. They do have indoor facilities, and you can kind of do something around that with some of the adventures. Okay. And here are some of our den meetings when we were finally able to meet. This is our tiger den, and they were earning their bobcat. And like Kristen had touched on, when they walk into the room, we do a temperature check. There is a sink in our meeting room, so all the Scouts, one of our little Scouts directs people to the sink area to wash their hands. And then they sit down, and we have a couple of tables. And even if the Scouts there's 5 of them. they can sit at one of the tables and still have enough space between them, and they wear their mask. And I kind of followed what the schools did. So when all the school supplies were on sale, I went and bought like a pack of color pencils and glue sticks, things that I knew we would be using for the whole year. And I put them in a Ziploc bag, and I bring them with me to every scout meeting. And there's one for each scout, so that they're not sharing or anything like that. And then you just, like Kristen was saying, you just got to kind of think outside of the box. And one of the things that Keely reminded us of is that the parents and the den leader are the Scouts Aquila in Cub Scouts. And so we have a little bit more room than Scouts BSA to change some of the requirements to adapt to get the kids their adventure loops. So just, like I said, thinking outside of the box. And then the last thing is kind of utilizing Scoutbook. It's, if you were able to go to the Scoutbook presentation that they did, I didn't get to see that, but I'm hoping to speak to the person who gave it. It's just a great resource, especially during a time where you may not be seeing your families all the time. Just a great way to communicate, to update the advancements, and just kind of keep everything current. And Keely, if you wanted to add something about that Scout book, I know you had mentioned it.
Yeah, take two. So one of the reasons why I really recommend Scoutbook is that there's two different types that you can log in as. So you can log in the general Scoutbook, which you log in if you're a leader or a parent. And then there's also the den leader experience. And so if you're a den leader who's watching this video and you want to know like how to plan or what requirements there are, and maybe you don't have a book for that new grade that you're the den leader for, if you are able to get on Scoutbook through the den leader experience, you have access to all of those handbooks and step-by-step guides on how to run your den meeting. And that is really useful for you communicating to your parents, this is what we're going to be working on. So let's say they can't make it, or maybe they're not comfortable attending in person, and the rest of the den is. They would be able to work on those same things at home and sign off on it for their kids if you are able to communicate to them what they're supposed to be working on. Now, one caveat is that if you are not a den leader, you will not have access to the den leader experience. So it's very important that if you are a den leader that you were registered as one, so you have access to that portion of Scoutbook. And then I do recommend learning the ins and outs of Scoutbook. We have some really good resources in our council as far as volunteers who know the Scoutbook program really well. And the things and the capabilities it has are really worthwhile.
So lastly, with that page, just trying to, one of the things I found myself doing was reading far ahead in my handbook, in my den leader guide, to see, okay, what can we get done outside while it's still warm? Or if like right now they're tigers, so we have, I think there's 6 requirements. In case in the winter it goes bad and we get put back on restrictions, what are the things that we need to get done now as far as the requirements versus electives? So just planning ahead and trying to stay steps ahead, kind of like Kristen was saying, she has a scout now on quarantine, so she's probably already ahead of that game, knowing what she's got to get to them. So and I'm sure this is how all the teachers are thinking at school. They've got to be like 10 steps ahead of COVID. So we're just trying to take a page out of their book. And then one of the things I was, and I was talking to Ricky about this, was that it seemed like there was a lot of doom and gloom, right? Just what is positive about this 2020 and all of these things. But it just seems like, I feel like it's going to be a great time for scouting because it's getting back outdoors. Like the outdoors are still like the safest space for us. I think that I had a lot of anxiety in the beginning about going into even just the grocery store with the lines on the floor and like the mask and everything. It was overwhelming, but I felt safe outside. And I think that people just feel safer outdoors. So, and they're also looking for some normalcy because literally all the sports have been shut down. At least here in Illinois, they couldn't play baseball, they couldn't play basketball, they couldn't play a lot of things. But here we are with scouting, and we're usually competing with those things. Like, we usually have scouts that I'm stopping so I can go play football, or I'm stopping so I can play baseball. And now scouting is the thing that you can still do safely. So I know for our pack, we recruited about 10 kids this year, which we were shocked. We didn't think we were going to have any recruitment just because people didn't want to get out. But we just kind of started seeing people were, I'd always thought about scouting, but there was never any time. And now this is the time for them. So just trying to take advantage of that, and really just, if you can create a program that's really engaging with the scouts, it'll be something that when everyone is allowed to go back to normal, they're gonna I'm gonna stay with scouts because it's such a great program. And then, not here, but I was telling somebody, like, it's also a great recruitment thing where, like, your friends, the scouts are having fun, they bring a friend, they tell a friend, and that's how you grow your pack. So here we are. And if you guys have any questions for Kristen or myself or Keely, all of our information is there. I would love to share just experiences or anything to help a unit. I love scouting, so